Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the LinkedIn Exchange Queen Exchange Live series, where we exchange thoughts, ideas, and insights of experts across industries. Today's topic is very interesting. It's about effective use of LinkedIn for generating B2B leads. And we have none other than Kazia Kora, who's here as our guest. Thank you so much, Kazia, for sparing time and being here. We are very excited to have you here. So, can you please start with sharing a little bit about yourself, what you do, and your journey?
hmm Thank you so much, Neha, for having me. I'm really excited to be a part of this today. And I always love to share my learnings. So, my journey has been I did my undergrad in the US, came back to India with the intent to kind of take over the family business. That was a little bit rocky. So, I quit and I got a job at a startup because the goal was to always start my own company. And so I felt that learning would be most suited to what I want to do. That's where I picked up all of the LinkedIn skills that I had because I handled everything that we did for marketing and sales on LinkedIn. Um, Fast forward to a year post that, I wanted to kind of start building my own company because my role had become quite specialized. Started off with an F&B kitchen, but that didn't go as planned, and so pivoted into LinkedIn marketing because I had the skills for that. And I was able to generate leads for a couple of family and friends that I was doing it for part time. So there was a problem statement as well. A lot of companies needed B2B marketing and they didn't know how to do it. So I got some validation through that. And then that's how I kind of set up the company and the team and built up from there.
Great. I mean, I think first of all, moving, I know how it is because even I have moved for joining the family real estate business and it can get tough. So I definitely, I mean, appreciate all the, I mean, there are just so many things that you need to take into consideration while making that big move. So kudos to that. And starting up your own business, that's not another either. So, I would love to know more about that. I mean, what are the challenges you face as setting up your own company and especially being a woman founder?
Yeah. To be really honest, having lived in the US, what I expected was a lot of technical difficulties because in India, the time taken to get things done is a lot more. And so that's what I expected. But I guess through the journey, I realized it's a mix of that plus an upward battle of trying to prove yourself as a woman constantly. This ranging from just setting up my own company bank account. The feedback I received, from financial experts, maybe I didn't go to the right ones, but ones with a more traditional maybe mindset, they advised me to operate things from my personal account instead of setting up a company account, which I thought would make more sense, which caused a lot of problems in the future for me because it made a complete mess of my company financials. And just understanding that these different suggestions were made to me, keeping in mind that I was a young girl and not having faith in my ability to see a business through. Minor instances like that was a bit of the challenge because I would listen to all of these people because obviously we listen to our elders and experts and we do things. So it taught me to learn to be a little more self confident as well as, identify the right mentors. That really helped me set up and build my company the right way. In terms of setting up, in terms of hiring, we've also had challenges, but these are normal, a little something of what all startup founders go through. I would say one of my biggest lessons from all of this is to hire slow and fire fast. I'm really empathetic, and so I've been overly empathetic towards my team. But I think while you are setting up your own company, it's really important to focus on the business as well as the team and not put your team above the business. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't care for your team. By all means, they are, going to drive your company ahead and they are individuals. So, yeah.
Totally. Now, when it comes to the topic of personal branding, right? What are the key elements to focus on that, and what helps you maintain the authenticity in online and offline?
Yeah. So personal branding, I would say, is the newest form of lead generation for B2B companies. I don't know if everyone's fully understood that, but Harvard Business review definitely has. And so, if you haven't already, you should read the article on why it's important to build a personal brand. Um, it's really crucial to maintain an organic growth approach, which is it tends to sustain longer for lead generation. And the key to authenticity online and offline is to sort of identify your values as an individual. And then when someone sees what you post or talk about online, and then they meet you offline, they realize you're the same person because your values are the same and you're talking about the same things. And that's what helps people trust you and build that connection more. For instance, um, a lot of the individuals that I've met either virtually or offline, after they've met me for the first time, I've seen them talk to me about my content. And maybe that's because now they know me personally and they know what I talk about on LinkedIn is the real me. And so I think that is something that is super important to maintain.
That's totally true. I mean, I think, and especially in the world of Chat GPT, I think people are
Yeah.
throwing in content with any sort of no personal touch either, which is what makes people different from the others. I think people who are authentic and are original. It's very much visible and relatable versus what you would just make it up out of some AI tools that you would use.
Yeah.
Now, how can individuals create more meaningful and valuable content for their LinkedIn personal brands? Is there any specific strategy or any specific tips that they can use?
Yeah. So, like you said, relatability is huge. It serves as a very organic approach to building a community. And, it may take longer to actually build that community, but at the end of the day, you find the right people, people that resonate with you and that will be true to your brand, right? Um, that being said, a couple of things to focus on is in when you are branding, you can't talk about too many different things because then people don't know what to associate you with. So I would say identify your niche, your area of expertise, and then pick 2 to 3 verticals including that, maybe one which is more of a personal passion, and talk about those things so you're not deviating too much. And people, for instance, I guess if people were to talk about toxic work culture or like want to know more about toxic work culture, they reach out to me because that's something I talk about a lot. And so identify, 3 topics that really mean something to you. So when you write that content as well, it's driven by your feelings and your emotions and real life instances, which is what touches people at the end of the day rather than just a bunch of industry jargon.
Totally. So this is something out of my own need as well in terms of driving more B2B leads, right? How do
Yeah.
you uh, drive more attention from companies as well, especially us being into diversity, skilling, and recruitment, right? What are the strategies that we could use or any other companies for B2B leads?
For B2B lead generation, I follow an organic approach because I find that it is the most sustainable way of lead generation. That is one form of lead gen through LinkedIn, which is through your personal brand. So typically through your profile or through your company profiles posts. At the end of the day, LinkedIn is a professional network. And so anything that you do from your personal profile tends to have a better impact than your company page. You can also run ads on LinkedIn. That's a way to generate leads through paid promotions and LinkedIn outreach. There are tools like Sales Navigator when you want to really increase the volumes of B2B lead gen. You can start reaching out to individuals that are from your target audience by choosing to solve their problems rather than just sending out those typical sales messages that we see or receive on LinkedIn all the time. That is a big no. That is going to most likely have your message be left on read and receive no response. So as long as you're not straight up pitching to people via
Right.
in mail or any messaging, I think just how you would build a relationship offline, that's the same approach to building your sales cycle on LinkedIn.
So be original, I guess. Be original and keep. Don't just go direct in terms of like a sales pitch, but be more personal in terms of building the relationship, and then maybe if there is any potential need of business to be driven from it, then go about, I guess, go through that process.
Yeah,
Now, when it comes to companies to do, foster more of DNI based experiences, how do you, what would you recommend for such companies?
yeah. So because I'm not an expert in DNI, this is more around just my learnings and observations, having been in the industry for the past few years. I would say there's, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, sexism was a lot more apparent. It was very, very evident. And so it was easier to call it out and find solutions and implement different practices in different companies to kind of, allow women to be at in C-level positions and not just men. So it was kind of those instances. Whereas these days, sexism is a lot more subtle. And so it's a little bit challenging to deal with it because not everyone notices it, or they try to downplay it or dismiss it entirely because it's not as evident as it used to be. And so I think educating around this and, offering safe spaces for women where they can actually talk about it and have that instance or issue addressed rather than dismissed would be huge in maintaining a lot of the practices companies do at present to be more inclusive and promote diversity.
You mentioned about that you talk a lot about toxic culture at workplace as well. Could you share more of your personal experiences in terms of how it's been toxic, or what are the things that companies can do to actually make it more healthy workplace culture?
Okay, so I started talking about toxic work culture in 2021, around July, when it was quite bad, in my opinion. But in the past 2 years, I've seen a huge shift, and a lot more people on LinkedIn are talking about toxic work culture. So I think as a society, we're already moving towards educating ourselves around this and doing something about it, which is absolutely great. Just some of the more, I guess evident things that I noticed back in the day were from running a services business, for instance, was lack of work life boundaries. On the employee side, teams where your manager or other teammates reach out to you any day of the week, any time of day, that's just not okay. Like, we need fixed hours for work so that people have time outside of work to do what they love or spend time with their families, things that really help them recharge for the next day at work. Because if you don't get that balance, you don't perform at work, you eventually burn out. Similarly, clients also need to understand that the same goes for the teams or the service agencies that they work with. um, Fixed communication windows is super essential because clients can't just sort of expect agencies to be at their beck and call based on the fact that they pay them a monthly retainer, right? Certain boundaries need to be set, and that's super important. Shouting is one of my pet peeves because I think in India, growing up, we all just learn to like scream and express any sort of frustration or emotion, but shouting never really gets the point across. Uh, Whoever is angry may get out their anger, but then the person that they're screaming at is just really taken aback by that they don't absorb the message, and it does not lead to solve the problem, right? And so constructive criticism is a better solution for that. These are some of the instances that I've noticed.
um, I think that's pretty good in terms of personal instances as well, in terms of doing the do's and the don'ts, in terms of what we should actually follow. I think we all should keep that in mind while being in a workplace and keeping that healthy atmosphere. Now, coming to just some practical ways to share our achievements or whatever we've been an experts on LinkedIn, right? Are there
Yeah.
any ways of is there anything called self promotions, and is it too much, or some people maybe sometimes overdo it? So, what is the right balance on doing that?
Okay, I would say this kind of ties back to what I spoke about before, where you focus on your niche and your area of expertise. So, say you've done a course or you've won an award relevant to your niche, then I would say just post it, because that just adds to your credibility, and it helps you generate leads, as well as it just boosts your profile in a
Right.
really positive, organic way, right? So it's not like you're boasting, it is something that you've accomplished by having built up that expertise in your domain. So that's completely fine to just share normally with any personal message you would use. A good example would be like if you won an award, you would probably give a speech, right? So that's how I would write that post. That's the kind of logic I'd use for that. That being said, if you want to talk about expertise and maybe achievements, but use that for lead generation, like where the objective is to actually generate leads by sharing this, then in that case, it shouldn't be a direct sell again. How this works is basically you talk about things that you've learned and your expertise. So you mix your personal insights with your expertise, and by sharing that knowledge, your target audience needs to learn that, right? And when they identify that you are able to kind of shed light on a topic that they're trying to understand further or problem solve for, they will reach out to you because they identify you as a known person in this space. And then that's how that translates to a lead, and then maybe eventually business.
So you think lead generation is the end goal, or that is that the metrics to actually know that you have been successful in creating your content, or is there any other way to also monitor and measure the success of content on LinkedIn?
Yeah. So again, it depends on your goal. So for everybody, their LinkedIn branding or personal branding or lead gen, like you have a different strategy or goal behind why you start doing it, right? For me, I would say when I first started posting on LinkedIn, it was a mix of my team and I. We would work together, and I also put up a lot of designs, etc., because I had a team helping me do that. And the goal was lead gen. So that's why I leveraged the team, right? But fast forward to 2023, I'm now building my personal brand. And so leads would not be a metric that I look at. For me, a metric is my content reach in terms of relatability. I think the best thing for me has been meeting people offline that recognize me from my LinkedIn and have told me they really like my content, because a lot of my content is quite controversial and out there, and I'm not sure if um, people like it or dislike it, or how they feel about it. So getting that kind of validation offline where I'm able to touch upon topics that mean something to people, that's kind of the metric I look for. And it all completely happened organically. I would say likes are the worst metric to look at on LinkedIn because they don't indicate anything. For instance, I have, above 10,000 followers, whereas somebody else who has maybe close to 1,000 followers, 20 likes on my post versus 20 likes on their post leads to a much different reach. I may get 4,000 views from just 20 likes, where they might get under 1,000 views from the same number of likes. So it's not the right metric to look at all. Um, I would say, based on your objective with LinkedIn, that's where you can find out metrics. Some would look at the number of followers that you increase per month, the number of profile visits you have per month, the number of leads you generate per month, or in my case, the number of people I touch per month. That's the goal.
Nicely said. So it's I guess, an objective which differs from each individual and each company, and I think identifying that is most important in terms of what your end goal is. I think we are almost coming close to our session, but we have a few questions also from the audience. So we have one person asking in terms of how we can target decision makers in large enterprises or corporate companies only. Is there a particular way to do that?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn you have different filters. So you can filter for company size. So you can look at, say you're trying to target a specific range of maybe 5,000 employees plus, you can filter for that range and then connect with decision makers from there. When you go to the search bar on LinkedIn, there are a lot of filter options. Play around with that and see what you need specific to your target audience. You will find most of your options without having to dive into Sales Navigator. When you need to take that sales a lot deeper, that's when you move to Sales Navigator.
So the filtering option that you mentioned is not a paid one, right? That is free, or do you
Yeah.
still have to have a premium account for that?
Oh, I'm actually not sure about that because I've been on premium the whole time. I've not actually used
Um,
LinkedIn free.
yeah, I think there are a few features that obviously are free
Yeah.
any which ways, and then premium, it all gets better by getting
Yeah.
more.
Also, if you are using LinkedIn for sales, if you're using LinkedIn just for content creation, I think it's fine to have a premium, I mean, a free account. But if you're using LinkedIn for sales as well, you can't really track whether someone's opening your message. And so it's really important to switch to premium if you're using that account for sales.
Sure. I think that's a great insight as well. That you need to have the premium account and the sales navigator is also, in case if you need to generate more leads. Now, before we wrap up, one last question. If you had to give three tips for people or companies to generate B2B leads, what would those be?
For both companies and people is leverage your personal brand over your company page because that leads to better lead generation. Identify your niche and make content that stands out. Like it's great to make topical content, for instance. If the World Cup is on and you post about that, your content will do well because that's just how content generation works. But aside from those kind of posts, talk about things that are meaningful to you, and I'm sure a lot of people will resonate with that. So meaningful content that you can't find by just googling will really really add value to people. And if you can share personal insights around that, storytelling is a really great way to touch people because we absorb stories in so many different forms, whether it be books, movies, TV shows. Everything is a story, right? So the same applies to content generation. For your reader to really relate to and understand what you're trying to say super easily, if you build it as a story, it's a very easy sell.
Great. Thank you so much for all the wonderful tips and insights, Kazia. It was great having you here, and we hope to obviously have more sessions with you. Thanks for your time, and have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Neha, for having me. This was a pleasure, and I look forward to more sessions with you.
Thank you. Bye
Have a
bye.
great evening, too. Bye.